Hello, welcome back to the Liverpool Echoes Blood Red podcast. I'm Matt Addison with Ian Doyle and Keifer MacDonald, both with me for this afternoon's show. I'm back in the hosting chair after a few weeks and after what seems like a very long time since Liverpool last played. There's still a whole weekend to go before the Reds are back in action. But don't worry, we'll be talking about that game with Crystal Palace on Monday night, as this is the last main show before that one. Blood Red, of course, moves to a Tuesday next week with Liverpool playing on the Monday. There are still some topics that we're going to go through for you today. I know the panel spoke a little bit about the midfield on Monday, so we'll touch on that a little bit, but not too much. We'll talk about Harvey Elliott as well, after he followed Diogo Jota and Stefan Bajcetic in signing a new contract on improved terms this week. But Doyle, the inevitable chat around the midfield has to come first. It seems to be on lots of podcasts, lots of social media talk around that at the moment. Jurgen Klopp, of course, was asked about it in his press conference as well. I suppose, firstly, it was just inevitable, wasn't it? After the Thiago injury and the performance of the midfield at Fulham, it was always going to be a week where that was going to be the big talking point.
Yeah, it's boring, isn't it? Really, really dull. I think Klopp's kind of addressed it. So anybody who's suggesting otherwise just needs to have a long, hard look at themselves and possibly spend their energy doing something else. It's lovely outside today, so go for a walk, do something like that. Fact is, Liverpool aren't going to sign a midfielder unless somebody comes up that they believe is going to improve the squad. And we've said it a million times that they're just looking, they've said that probably next season will be the time, next summer will be the time where they sign players. And you don't have to read between the lines too much that some of the players that they might be after. I mean, the lad at Monaco's gone to Real Madrid. Liverpool were interested in him, tried to sign him, wants to go to Real Madrid. And everyone's kind of like suggesting that showed that Liverpool have shown their hand that they can buy a midfielder. No, actually, what it does this summer, what it actually does show is that, they were quite happy to buy the midfielders that they actually want to buy. And he was one of them, and he wanted to go to Real Madrid, and that's that. And so he was available, as has been proven by the fact he's gone somewhere else. And so anyone else that they're interested in, probably is clearly not available. Unless something changes in the next, 3 weeks, that's going to be that. So I do believe that that's the situation, because you've got to bear in mind as well, at the start of the summer, we kind of assumed Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was going to go because he's obviously out of contract at the end of the summer. But then that changed, that he was going to be staying, irrelevant to whether the fact he got injured or not. And I think part of that is probably because they didn't get in the midfielder that they perhaps wanted. So, this isn't rocket science. You just join the dots and. Yeah, Liverpool, I'm sure, right, personally speaking, I think Liverpool will be better off with another goalkeeper, another right back, another centre-back, another midfielder, another forward. But funnily enough, that's not going to happen. So you have to cut your cloth accordingly and your cloth accordingly even. Easy for you to say. And look at the other teams. I mean, interesting that Klopp was asked about the midfielders again, and when he certainly said it, I mean, the people in the press room were like, "Oh, right," and he did say, "Look, I know people are going to ask me this, so I have to answer it." And his answer's been consistent over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, isn't it? I think it was back in where were we? He got asked before he even went to Thailand and Singapore about it. He gave the answer, which when he got asked about it in Singapore was exactly the same. And when he got asked about it at the start of the season was the same. When he got asked about it last week was the same. When he got asked today was the same. So pretty consistent message. So as I say, nice weather outside. Use your energy otherwise, because that's not me being flippant. That's just a statement of a fact. That is just a fact. And could Liverpool sign somebody between now and September the 1st, a midfielder? Yeah, if the right one becomes available. But at the moment they aren't, and there are other factors at play. That the other team has to have a replacement lined up. They have to, and let's look at, say, for example, a player like Jude Bellingham, who Liverpool quite clearly like and would like to sign. Dortmund made it quite clear they're only going to sell one player this summer, one major player, and that was Haaland. He's gone to Man City, and I think everybody knew that. I wrote that. What month is it? I wrote that about 10 or 11 months ago, and funnily enough, nothing's really changed since then. So. I don't know. Maybe if people always want more, and the fact that Liverpool didn't win the first game means some people are terrified for the season ahead. So I just think they just need to bear in mind as we're recording this, it's August the 12th. Season doesn't finish till seems like next July or something like that. It's a long time off, long way to go. Liverpool will just as it not as if Liverpool haven't earned any trust from what's happened over the past 4-5 years under Klopp. Yeah, there are some players who are getting old. You look at Henderson and Milner; they're not going to go on forever. But Elliott is there now. You got Carvalho's coming. There are, Thiago, I know he's injured now, but he wasn't there 2 years ago. So they have been changing the team around. So, people do want more and more and more, but unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And as I said, unless something changes, the circumstances change that suit Liverpool, they're not going to be signing a midfielder until next year.
Yeah, lots of stories in Portugal this week around Matheus Nunes and various other players. But again, like you say, they've been available. They've been there to be had all summer. Liverpool haven't done it. That would probably suggest that they're not going to do it just now, Keifer, after a week of that. And Doyle mentions there the kind of other options that Liverpool have. Obviously, a couple of injuries. There's been a few people, I think, possibly slightly panicking a little bit too much in terms of the number of options available. And the comparison is kind of there when they waited and didn't sign a centre-back. But it's a little bit different to that, isn't it? That was 2 positions and they had 3 senior players. This is maybe 3 positions or 2 if you change formation. And they do have still, even with a few injuries, still 5 or 6 players that are available.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, as Doyle says, after the weekend, I think obviously not winning your first game of the season and then obviously the following night, obviously Man City go and win theirs, it obviously does amplify those fears that people have. But, there is still plenty of options within the squad. And I think also the fact that, Curtis Jones' injury the week before was then so quickly followed by Thiago's, obviously probably made the situation feel, probably worse than it is. I mean, until the first international break of the season, which is just before the end of September, I think it's only about 1 game a week. So it's not exactly like they're competing on all fronts like they were last season. And, by that time at the end of September, you'd hope that Thiago will be back. I mean, Klopp said today he's hoping it's closer to 4 weeks. You'd expect Curtis Jones to be back by then as well and well and truly in the mix. And obviously, Carvalho, he's shown that he can play in that midfield 3 as well. So there is options available. And, I don't think, even the most optimistic Liverpool fan would have expected Thiago to play, every single game this season, given his injury record since he came from Bayern Munich 2 years ago. So, that was something. It's not caught Liverpool cold, maybe because it was so early in the season that might have. But I don't think they would have been sitting here thinking, he's fit enough, or his track record suggests he can probably start 38 Premier League games. So from that perspective too, I don't think it's too surprising. You could maybe look at the number 6 position, that maybe that is a bit light given that it's only Fabinho, and then you're probably dragging Henderson into that position as well. But as Klopp said today, Henderson did really well there. His best performances last season, that one at Old Trafford sticks out when Fabinho wasn't able to play, and Henderson was key in that getting that 5-0 win. Obviously gets the assist for Mo Salah. So there is versatility within the squad, and I think as well there's a number of not question marks, but I think an opportunity for so many players within the squad at the minute. I think you look at Naby Keita, he's entering the final 12 months of his contract. As much as fans would like to go out and get that that shiny new midfielder, you've got a £52 million midfielder who does. Yeah, he maybe hasn't hit the heights that people would have expected since he joined in 2018. But there's still 50 or so games you'd expect this season where he's going to have to prove that he is good enough to be at Liverpool, and that Liverpool should be looking to extend his contract, and that he can be a constant figure in that Liverpool team after the likes of Jordan Henderson and James Milner departing in the coming years. And as well, you look at Curtis Jones, someone who's he's probably been up and down during his time in the first team, but again, he's so young. So the only way to kind of get him through those experiences of having maybe a couple of good games, then followed by not as many good games, is by playing him and giving him minutes. That can be frustrating at times, but that's part of the process. We saw City do that with Phil Foden, and they're obviously kind of reaping the benefits now. Same goes for Harvey Elliott. Obviously signed the new contract yesterday afternoon. That's another big show of faith from Liverpool, and obviously further future proofing for after the likes of Milner and those go. So I can understand why people might be a bit knee jerk in their reactions given what happened last weekend. But I think if all it takes is Liverpool to go and put 3 or 4 past Palace on Monday night for those fears to be eased, and people to be looking ahead to that trip at Old Trafford going with good form. I don't think there's and we've seen with Klopp as well during his time, as Doyle said, he's earned the trust of supporters. You have to go back to 2017, the whole Van Dijk saga. When Southampton kind of shut down their attempts, and instead of going out and getting whoever was on the market at the time, whether that be Koulibaly or anyone else who was linked with Liverpool. He stuck to his guns and, maybe went through that rocky period, during those, October months. I'm thinking back to that game against Tottenham at Wembley, and he got his man in Van Dijk in the January, and obviously, that's paid dividends, isn't it? 4 years later, he's probably the best defender in the world, if not, the best that the Premier League has ever seen. So, I think Klopp is, and the club as a whole have certainly, earned enough trust over the last couple of years. If they do decide that this summer isn't, the right time to go and get a midfielder, or the man isn't on the market, I think people should certainly, trust them and what they've got planned. And as Doyle says, plenty can change. We've got 3 weeks until the end of the transfer window. Obviously it is a knock-on effect, if the likes of Jude Bellingham, if they would have to get a replacement, but there's still plenty of time. I mean, stranger things have happened, and I don't think it will happen, but you can never really say never in the transfer window. That sounds very Jim White, that does, so I do apologise for that, but there is plenty of time left, and even if they don't bring someone in, I think they've got enough within the squad anyway to kind of challenge on both big fronts this season.
Yeah, it certainly provides an opportunity, doesn't it, for one or two other players. We've mentioned Harvey Elliott a couple of times now, Doyle. Is he the obvious one that you turn to in terms of shaking things up in that midfield? Naby Keita is an option as well, but to me, Harvey Elliott, it just feels like the time to put him back into that position again.
Yeah, forget Thiago's injury. I'm pretty sure if Thiago, Fabinho and Henderson had all finished the game on last Saturday, fans would have been calling for them all to be dropped because they were all absolutely terrible. So the fact that he's injured kind of means that Klopp's got to make one change. I think Elliott's the obvious one because he's come on the last two. The only other person you could say is James Milner, but I think Milner is going to be more of he will. The 5 substitutions mean that Milner can play 60 minutes one game, play half an hour next, and he knows he doesn't have to play the full thing. And I think with Fabinho and Henderson, they're not in it. I would be surprised if they were dropped, let's put it that way. So I think Harvey Elliott's the obvious choice because he's coming on the last 2 games and he's done well. I mean, we mentioned on the pod the other day that when Elliott come on, that's when Salah started playing because he had somebody in midfield who actually could pass to him as opposed to trying to give him all these ridiculous passes. So that helped. And I think that kind of link up is something that cannot be ignored, and Klopp will have seen that. And that's probably why, going back to last year, that's why Elliott ended up playing in midfield because he was on that right side and he was linking up with Salah, and Salah's got a lot of time for him, and you can see that from the way they are on the pitch and the way you've seen him in the training ground. And I know I was there at Leeds when Elliott got injured, and Salah was the first player over there to him and telling the trainers to get on. And I've since read in Linda's book that he was absolutely fuming after the game, wasn't he? Salah in the dressing room about it, so he was a bit upset about it. So, there is that if you've got your best player, then you've got another player you can get in the team and bring more out of him, then fair enough. And there's every chance that Elliott will go on to become a very important player for Liverpool. If not this season, then with seasons to come. But yeah, I think he's the obvious one to come in. Keita would have been a very good choice, but he's not played the last couple of games because he's been ill, and I do think that counts against him. But again, you can see Keita getting half an hour. And even if Keita does start, I think if Keita starts, you're looking at both. You're looking at it would be him and Elliott with either Fabinho or Henderson, and I think that's a bit of a progressive midfield for a first home game of the season, especially when you can make the subs after an hour, or you've got that many substitutions that you can make. So I can't really see Klopp doing that, particularly because he'll probably start. I know not doing team selection, but Núñez looks like he could be starting up front as well. So Elliott's the one who could come in, and it's funny, isn't it? Because this time last year, people were, a bit of a curiosity and saying, "Oh, this is going to be incredible. We've got Harvey Elliott's come through. Isn't he doing really, really well?" Everyone just seems to have forgot that. Thiago's injured. Now Elliott's about to come back in again, and it's people are like, "No, it's only Harvey Elliott." But it's like, well, hang on, no, it is Harvey Elliott, and he's hang on. Last year, 12 months ago, everybody was saying how great he is. That he's going to be the future. Not his fault he got injured. So I don't really understand why people are complaining so much or not getting more excited about him than they should be, because he's somebody that Klopp loves. I think it was the game at Southampton, wasn't it, last year, end of last season, I should say, where him and Curtis Jones started, and Klopp kind of hinted, this could be a bit of a future or something that he would like to see more often. Obviously, Curtis Jones being injured means that can't happen, but Harvey Elliott's there, he's ready, he played well in the summer. He's somebody who's ready to start, so yeah, it should be him.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the new contract before we sort of come around to other bits, Keifer. I mean, it wasn't one that was running down. It wasn't one that Liverpool had to desperately do now, but it is one that obviously, again, this pattern of rewarding these players for their progress, very much the case with Harvey Elliott.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he only played 600 or so minutes since he signed his last contract, but I think it's obviously his wider importance in the team and within the squad, and it feels like he is kind of cementing that position as a first 12, 13 player within that Liverpool squad. I mean, in his interview yesterday, he spoke that this contract feels more of a first team contract than last season. Obviously, he'd just come back from the loan at Blackburn Rovers, and it wasn't long after that he kind of asserted himself in that Liverpool team, didn't he? He had that brilliant game against Burnley. Where he was involved, showed that link up with Salah and Trent on the right hand side, didn't he, for Mane's second goal, and then obviously started the week later against Chelsea. And as Doyle says, the way he links up with Salah and Trent on that right hand side is really exciting, and given that he's left footed as well, that rotational play with Salah, I think really does help occupy defenders and give Salah that bit of room, and he certainly was one of the brighter players on Saturday afternoon when he came on. So I think it's going to be a big season for him, and obviously the contract is is going to be justification for kind of what's to come, you'd expect. And Klopp still does have Klopp's obviously very complimentary of him after his injury against Leeds last year when he came back against Cardiff. I mean, Klopp said that just complimented his mentality and kind of everything he'd been through and kind of his positive outlook on life. And I think that's probably that time, even though he wasn't on the pitch and wasn't able to make the impact he would have hoped for after those handful of starts earlier in the season. It was it's probably a different side to Harvey Elliott that they saw during those months, doing rehabilitation on his own, and to kind of get through that injury at such a young age, it kind of shows that he's got wise head on young shoulders, which is going to be really important going forward for him, and to be able to handle the kind of limelight that he's coming into, and certainly makes him deserving of this new contract. And I think as well, Doyle says that people have probably forgotten the impact that he did have last season. It feels like he has been around because he came when he was 16 years old. This is third or fourth season now, 3 years since he joined, and it's like he hasn't played that much football, or as much football as you'd probably expect if you've probably got his stats down on paper and the minutes he's racked up for the first team. It's nowhere near what it kind of feels like he's played. It feels like we've seen a lot more of him than we actually have. And it's the same with Curtis Jones in a sense. I think you will get frustrating performances from him. You might not get that in product. He's certainly not a polished diamond yet, but the potential is there. And the only way to kind of to kind of smooth him out is to give him minutes within the first team. And I think the game on Monday night, as Doyle says, regardless of whether Thiago is injured, I think it feels like a really good game for him. Liverpool you'd expect to have most of the ball against a compact Palace side. So it's perfect for him to kind of pick up the ball in the pockets and kind of link up with Salah and obviously Núñez if he does start. So I think hopefully he can kind of kickstart his season, and Liverpool can on a positive on Monday night, and kind of remind everyone of just how important he can be to this Liverpool side and how good he was this time last year.
Yeah, I mean, it always kind of felt like it was going to be a big season for him, but obviously we all know what happened with the injury last season, just at the wrong time. I mean, there's never a right time for an injury like that, but it felt like he was just about to get a real run in the side. What do you think should be the expectation for him this season? Is there a point where, I know Liverpool don't necessarily have a starting 11, but is there a point this season where he sort of becomes one of the first names in that midfield trio?
Probably. I would think that he would probably think that, and I think Klopp would want that because he's good enough, and he'll do something a bit different. It all depends on what happens with Núñez. Now he adapts on what they want to do with him. So yeah, he can play in a couple of positions as well, can't he? So that'll be helpful for Liverpool going forward. Certainly on the right flank. I mean, they haven't really got a backup for Salah, have they really? And there probably will be some games where he's pushed a little bit further forward, but it does look as though he seems to prosper a bit more on the right side of that midfield three. And then, I don't know, what say Liverpool go to 4-2-3-1, maybe playing on the right side of that would help him even more. So there's plenty there for Liverpool to go at, and he's the kind of player who the other players immediately when he signed, you could tell from just when they play together that they just trust him on the ball, so they just give it to him and they know he's going to usually make the right decision. And you're coming into a Liverpool team that's the top 3 teams in the world, so if you're able, I think people forget about that. Especially with the youngsters who come in, it's not like they're coming into Liverpool from 5, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. This is one of the best teams, best managed teams in the world. So it's going to be hard for them to get in and do something. They have to have something about them. And Elliott clearly has that. And I wrote a couple of weeks ago saying, in the preview for the season, saying, fully expect the Liverpool team that ends the season to be different to the one that starts it. And I think one of those things will be having Harvey Elliott in and around the team, if not regularly starting by that time.
100%. It feels like a big one for him. You wouldn't be surprised if he managed to establish himself. Wouldn't be surprised to see him on the starting 11 as well for Monday night. So let's talk a little bit about Crystal Palace as well. Keifer, I'll come to you first on them. I mean, obviously the draw with Fulham on the opening day wasn't ideal. It probably felt like a defeat for a lot of Liverpool fans. Does that increase the pressure at all in this match, or is it just a case really of the performance as much as the result really needing to massively improve?
Not really. I mean, Liverpool in any season will be, aiming to win all their home games. So, I don't think dropping points to Fulham, changes that. It doesn't change the mentality within the squad. It probably agitates a few more people, a few more of the fans going into the game, maybe a bit of nervous energy. But, I'm sure, within the first half an hour or so, back at Anfield, controlling, having a lot of possession, I'm sure those kind of fears will be eased. And, you got to think as well that Liverpool didn't have as long of a pre-season as they did last season. I think they had 6 weeks last year, and obviously I think probably about a month this time. Obviously it's a quick turnaround given how long their season was last year, 63 games long. So I think when you look at it rationally, the performance wasn't good at Fulham, but it is understandable in a way that they didn't hit the ground running. I mean, we've seen it in recent years. Man City aren't renowned for for how quickly they start Premier League seasons. So they've always gone on to to pick up another 90 or 95 points. So there's no reason Liverpool can't do that. But I mean, it'll be an interesting one. I mean, they only played Palace, didn't they? A month ago now, obviously out in the Far East. I know, obviously, it was a much changed Palace side, given the problems they kind of had with getting senior players over to pre-season for various reasons. So it'll be a different side, and obviously for Liverpool as well. They had a lot of youngsters out that day, and drawing those two games in the Far East, they kind of split it into like 3 or 4 teams. So there'll be it will be a completely different test. Obviously, it'll be you'd hope it'd be a lot cooler than it was out there. But I don't think the mentality will change going into this one. I fully expect Liverpool to pick up their first win of the season and almost kind of dust the cobwebs down after what would have been wasn't a long summer, but mentally it probably would have felt a bit long having the hangover from the Champions League final and given all the games they played and obviously what happened on the final day of the Premier League season. So kind of getting that out of their system and kind of the spring in the step that various players have had this week with the likes of Elliott having his new deal. If he is going to start, he's going to be wanting to get a goal or an assist or just influence the game, so to kind of mark that. So I feel like I say I fully expect Liverpool to win, and I think it's crazy, isn't it? One defeat, or what feels like a defeat, one draw against Fulham, and people kind of really start to doubt this side that have been probably one of the best sides, if not the best side in club football. Over the past kind of 3 or 4 years, all the trophies they've won and all the moments they've given supporters seems to all be forgotten. After their Mitrovic double, so I'm sure they'll want to get back to winning ways, and the fans as well. They'll want to see the team that they've seen and the performance levels that they've been used to, and it feels like a good test against Palace, and there's plenty to be excited about. With Darwin Núñez, it'll probably be his first start as well. He'll be looking to get his first Anfield goal in Liverpool colours. So it's very exciting. Like I say, a shame it's probably not a Saturday 3:00 kickoff, given it's the first home game of the season. But I'm sure the excitement will be there nevertheless.
Yeah, Jurgen Klopp was really honest about the performance, didn't he, last week, despite a few selective quotes about grass being thrown around in certain areas. But he will want a response from that, won't he? The Anfield crowd will expect it. The first home game of the season, you'd expect a very different Liverpool performance on Monday night compared to last Saturday.
Well, you hope so. Not least because the game will kick off a bit later, so they won't still be in bed as they clearly work for that half-12 kickoff, which I think people have overlooked a little bit. Liverpool, I think last season they won all the half-12 games without conceding a goal, but this year, just this season, on Saturday, they just weren't there. But that happens. It just, it's happened before. It'll happen again. That just happens, and the only timing of it meant it was the first game after what happened against Man City. Everyone was on the up, and I just think people seem to forget that. Look at some of the other results that have happened already this season. From certain teams who you'd think should be doing a bit better. And I think next couple of weeks we'll get more daft scorelines. Liverpool just have to hope that they don't get on the wrong end of too many of them and give themselves too much to do in terms of catching up with whoever it is that might be leading the way at the time. So there is that. Klopp, we couldn't say much more else about the performance because after the game, he just said exactly what he said again today. So, without wishing to say we're going round in circles a little bit, I think we are, and I think he'll know exactly what needs to be done. There will be changes to the team. They'll have had an extra week on the training ground, which will help. Although you could argue that would have preferred a game in midweek to get it out of the system, but it's the first home game of the season. Liverpool traditionally do quite well in those fixtures, and they need to get a win because that'll settle any nerves from some of the. I'd imagine that the nervous fans won't be the ones who tend to attend the games as often as some of the other ones, shall we say, because they see it for what it is. And I think funny enough, for the game against Strasbourg, the friendly, where Liverpool obviously have a reserve team, there weren't. I would imagine that was an atmosphere where there were a lot of people who don't normally get a chance to go to the games, a lot of families there. And they got behind the team in the second half, and there was a couple of youngsters there who were playing. He could end up playing. You look at Harvey Elliott, he was playing. We mentioned him before. Carvalho probably will get some minutes. So there are going to be opportunities for these people, and I wouldn't be too concerned about the game in that sense. I'd be more concerned about the fact that it's Palace, and then Palace were absolutely dreadful in the first 20 minutes against Arsenal, but after that, in the first game, and after that, they did quite well. And I think if you bear in mind, this time last year, Liverpool, I think it was in September, they played Palace. And I know they had Conor Gallagher, who was their best player last season. He's not there now. He's gone back to Chelsea. But Palace gave Liverpool a really good game. And I think it'll be the same again. I mean, how many times have Liverpool had last season when they nearly won all four? How many league games did they have where you thought, well, this has been quite fairly straightforward? Well, apart from Manchester United, both games. I mean, the rest of them, a lot of them at the time, it was a battle. Just you can go through nearly every single team that they played last season, again, with the exception of Manchester United, weirdly. And every team gave them a game at some point, whether it was home or away. So I don't think anybody should expect anything different. Premier League's hard. It's difficult. And Liverpool aren't going to blow teams away. And the way that they play the game, certainly in the last couple of years, they're very rarely going to do that because they get a bit more control. It's not like when Klopp was there, when he first came in, and he got on, the feet under the table, they win in home games 6-1, 6-0, 5-0, and then they go to somewhere like, I don't know, Hull and get beat 2-0, something like that. It doesn't really tend to happen that often these days. So I do think the fans who are there or watch them more regularly in detail will know exactly what to expect on Monday, and Klopp will know he expects his team to be a lot better, because if they play like they did against Fulham, they're probably not going to win.
No, absolutely. Palace, a good team, lots of good players all over the pitch. But just before we finish the podcast, then let's go through our Liverpool teams for the game. Alisson Becker will be in goal. Doyle, I'll come to you first on the defence. I mean, there's probably not loads of changes that you can make in there. Is there any temptation to switch things up at the back? Is there a Joe Gomez opportunity, or are you saying to the same lads, go and do it again, but do it a lot better?
I think Joe Gomez will play in that week where they've got 3 games, which is next week, is it? Next week? I know next week, if you see what I mean. Yeah, they've got... Is it Newcastle?
Newcastle Wednesday, isn't it?
So they've got... No, it's not. It's the week after, you're right, because they got United next week. Yeah, that'll be the week where they play Bournemouth, Newcastle, and Everton. I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
that'll be the week where you see Gomez play, and I think you might see Tsimikas play as well if he's back fit. So, and even then, as I said, like a broken record, 5 subs, they can just change things around and give people a rest. So you might not necessarily see Tsimikas, for example, starting as many games as he did last season, but you might see him playing more minutes because he'll come on from at some point during games, because Liverpool can do that and rotate. So yeah, I do think the defence has to be the defence, because I know some people are having to go at Trent for his defending, although everyone then just seems to completely forget that Van Dijk did a penalty and no one's having to go at him for that. Bit strange, but I suppose obviously we mentioned it. Van Dijk's got a little bit of credit in the bank. So Trent.
Trent, to be fair.
So Trent. I mean, come on. I mean, just because it wasn't his fault that he was left isolated at the far post against this big beast of a striker. You try heading that clear. It was a good cross. It was a good goal for Fulham. So, there is that. Other teams are allowed to score decent goals, and it's not as if it wasn't coming in that game. So, yeah, I mean, overall he didn't have a particularly great game, but then a lot of them didn't. So, no, the defence is the same.
Keifer, same for you, or possibility for a change?
No, I think same again. I think defence wins your titles, doesn't it? And I think there's no point changing a faulty back line after one game. I think, it's earned plenty of trust, the four of them, over the other five, if you include the goalkeeper, over the years. And, I don't think, Klopp be looking to send out that kind of message, early on. I mean, obviously, Gomez obviously signed a new contract this year. It's a big season for him as well. But, I think, his minutes will come in due course. I won't be looking to, to change massive just yet.
Yeah, I would have thought all four of those players would improve on Monday, certainly compared to what they were like on Saturday. You'd certainly be worried if they weren't. But let's move on to the midfield then. I'm going to make a couple of changes. I'm going to bring Elliott and Keifer in. Henderson as the number 6. Doyle, are you the same as me, or is it just the one change for you?
Don't know. I mean, Fabinho, I think people forget Fabinho was injured at the end of last season. I still think he was. I think that's partly contributed to the Champions League final. He still had a bit of a problem. Thiago got injured as well. It turns out couldn't feel his foot or something like that, wasn't it? So, that didn't help. But no, I think you got to stick with Fabinho because he needs to get the minutes and get that kind of rhythm. So he plays. I was tempted to put Keifer and Elliott in, but again, the subs thing means there's no point. So start with Henderson and Elliott.
Keifer, which way are you?
I'm going for Fabinho, Elliott, Henderson. I think as Dudley touches on there, the 5 subs obviously a massive reason for that. But also I think to have someone like Henderson alongside, or even Fabinho as well, but to have those alongside Elliott and kind of guide him through the game, is going to be really important. He's quite emotional, but to that first start after his new contract and first start of the season, first start at Anfield in a while, it's going to be really important to kind of have that those senior heads around him. I mean, Linda's spoken his book into about how he pairs kind of, likes to pair an older player with a younger player. It works both ways kind of thing. That's definitely what I'm going with. I think obviously Kate hasn't trained as much over the last couple of weeks because of illness. But with the 5 subs, you'd expect him to hopefully get half an hour in the bank and then be looking maybe for a start against United next week. But I'd definitely be sticking with that midfield, given that they've all played this season at some point.
Yeah, the only reason I went Keifer, to be honest, was because I'm not a massive fan of Henderson on the left side. If I want Elliott on the right, then I think Henderson has to be centre rather than left. But we'll see what Jurgen Klopp does. In terms of the front 3, I mean, it's pretty obvious for me. I think Salah, Nunez and Diaz. Doyle, is it that, or does Roberto Firmino get a chance to not put things right, but maybe improve on what he did last week?
No, it's that.
Perfect. Keifer, is it that?
I don't think I can top that one line by Doyle, but no, I think it'll be that as well. I mean, obviously Klopp said today, didn't he, that they probably didn't give Firmino the service he deserved last week against Fulham. Probably wasn't his fault that he wasn't as isolated as he was, and obviously the impact that Nunez had, obviously gets the goal, gets the assist as well. He's just something different, isn't he? And I think obviously it kind of frees up Salah, as we saw for his goal last week. And hopefully it's the start of a new kind of look front 3 over the next couple of years. I mean, it's just really exciting from what we've seen from Nunez already. During his time at Benfica when he came to Anfield, and even his 2 appearances against City and Fulham. He's looked really sharp, and I think as well it's a really good opportunity and a really good opponent for him to kind of make his Anfield debut. Liverpool are going to dominate the ball as we kind of expect, and with that 4-2-3-1 that there'll be space for him to run in behind, and with Elliott playing, in the pockets as well, it could be something, really that does benefit Nunez, and hopefully he can kind of get off the mark.
Yeah, they certainly looked a lot better in attack with him on the pitch last week, so that's what I'm going for as well. Let's finish with match predictions, or score predictions, I should say. I'll go 2-0 to Liverpool. I think I fancy Salah and Nunez both to score. Doyle, what's your score prediction?
I think my match prediction is Liverpool against Crystal Palace on Monday.
Correct.
And my score prediction is 2-1. I think Paris will score. I think it'll be a bit nervy. I think Liverpool will get it done. And they'll do it in a way whereby it'll be a lot better performance, and people will go, "Well, how come they didn't win it by more?" It's a very precise by the way, this prediction, where they should have won it by more, or they could just score loads of goals. Yeah, so it's still 2-1. Still 2-1.
2-1. Keifer, Liverpool to win.
I'll go 3-1. Yeah, I think maybe potential for a few nerves, but I think Liverpool will get a late one to seal it off. So yeah, it's the first fixture this season.
Yes, exactly. Any win will do. That will just about do us, though, for today's podcast. Lots of stuff, of course, to come over the weekend before the game and on Monday as well. As I mentioned earlier, the Blood Red podcast will then be back with all of the analysis of Monday's game on Tuesday, hopefully by which time Liverpool have picked up their first 3 points of the campaign. Until next time, though, from all of us here, it's goodbye for now.